Good afternoon. I'm the first speaker of the day that can wish you a good afternoon. Your patience with all of us is greatly appreciated. It's a great pleasure for me to be with you all here today in this wonderful setting in this very historic event. I'm a new face to most of you. My name is Rob Luton, and I'm responsible for Mastercard's corporate development. And corporate development is the sourcing of any of our investment or acquisition activity. So what I'd like to do today is just take you through a little bit of how we think about strategic investing at Mastercard. So we've heard a lot about this morning. Payment evolution, faster than ever. Pace is never going to slow down. A lot of change here, a lot of change going to continue. The way I think of this, the trends here in this space, it began with the electronification of payments themselves. As payments became electronified, particularly consumers paying merchants, that became a larger and larger portion of economies. What happened from there? Governments became interested in these payment flows. Also, new competitors emerged. And also, bad actors have shown up because the prize for disrupting those flows can be very profitable for them. So we have more attention from regulators, new competition, and bad actors. We also have better connected consumers, businesses, small and large, around the world who are demanding safer, easier, and more rewarding payments. So basically, there's really no going back. We're not going to go back to a time when it was simply cash, traveler's checks, and plastic cards. It's a one-way direction going forward. When I think of the trends, and we've heard a lot of people talk about trends, I think of 5 areas from an investing perspective that are relevant to us. Number one, I already mentioned one, as the electronic payments continue their penetration and the spread of IoT and proliferation there, cybersecurity and the threats to payments are just going to continue to increase. It's effectively an escalating arms race. And so just because you're the safest way to pay today doesn't mean you can sit back and relax and think, oh, we're all set. You're going to have to continue to invest to provide safe payments for your stakeholders. Regulators are very interested in promoting their local payments environment, supporting it locally, but also they want to incorporate the best of global solutions. Digital merchants, digital giants, we've heard about them. They now look at payments as part of their own ecosystem. And so they are a new constituent, new stakeholder that are critical as part of this equation. And the electronification of consumer to merchant payments has now spread, and you're seeing more and more electronification of P2P payments, B2B payments, and disbursements. And lastly, we've heard about machine learning. It is a new tool, it's a new dimension to tools, and it's really going to unlock new solutions to existing challenges and existing opportunities. When you think of MasterCard, you typically think of consumers paying merchants with plastic. That's a large part of our business. So our core payments business is about 75% of our revenues. This past September, we announced the fact that a full 25% of our revenues now are coming from services and products that are enabled by and support that core business, but are not the enablement of the payment itself. And you can see here on this chart, the growth rate is much faster than the core business itself. So over time, we didn't announce what that number was, but 5 years ago, that was a very small sliver of the pie. So over time, that gold section there is going to become larger and larger and larger as we continue to diversify our business. So the fundamental business strategy of MasterCard is to grow that core section, diversify both geographies and customers, and then build new businesses that are both enabled by and support that core business. When I keep saying stakeholders, I first and foremost mean banks. There are first and foremost partners as issuers and acquirers, but it also includes consumers, merchants, small businesses, large businesses, and governments. All those stakeholders are critical to our success. So investing. The investment remit for MasterCard is wide, worldwide. And by stage of company, it ranges from early stage companies. We've made about a dozen investments in seed A, B round companies, and we've made acquisitions, including 4 this year. To give you a sense of the level of activity of my team, this year alone, we'll look at about 1,000 opportunities. We will look closely at about 150 of those. We'll perform due diligence on about 20, and we've already closed 4 acquisitions and about 10 minority strategic investments this year. So people ask me, what's the rationale for this investment versus that investment? If you just look at the investment, sometimes it's hard to see the pattern. But generally, our strategic investing falls into one of these 3 categories. The first is when we secure a long-term commercial agreement, and the partner is interested in us having aligned interests, and so we may take a stake in that partner as a way of showing that support. And the example would be Avid Exchange, which was actually our largest strategic investment we made earlier this year in support of B2B Payments Hub, utilizing smarter payments to be more efficient for buyers and suppliers in the US market. The second example here is what we call invest to own. It may be where an acquisition is a company we want to acquire potentially, but the synergies aren't that obvious up front or not that certain. And therefore we perhaps start a partnership first to prove out, have a proof of concept, and after that successful POC, then move to an acquisition. So Brightarian's a company we took a minority stake in, back in 2009, 2010, I believe. And only this year actually acquired the company. And Brightarian uses machine learning to deliver market-leading fraud management solutions. So if you're enjoying the benefit of Mastercard's market-best fraud management solutions, the machine learning behind that for many years now has been Brightarian. The last one refers to the earlier stage. I mentioned 12 early-stage investments. This is part of Mastercard's Start Path program generally. So we have a program, it's an accelerator of sorts. It's not a traditional accelerator like a VC or others may have, but it's taking advantage of early-stage companies who want to take advantage of Mastercard's internal resources, whether those are technical, regulatory, or any other expertise we have. And we basically give those folks about 6 months of sort of inside access to Mastercard to help them grow. Last year we had 1,600 companies apply, and we had 16 companies go through the program. This year we'll have about 24 companies go through that same program. Every time a company goes through that program, they do give us an option to invest. And to date, I think we've taken that up, as I mentioned, about 12 times. So about 1 in 3 we've taken up. And in fact, in that Start Path program, ZenCard was one of the initial participating companies in that program in the first year. And that was prior, of course, to the acquisition earlier this year by PKO Bank Polski in January. When we think of acquisitions, they also fall into a couple of different categories. So if you think of New Data is a company we acquired this year, and I think it was referenced earlier, how you hold your smartphone. This company actually has about 50 different ways. So if I type 4 digits and I hand it to any one of you, it just knows that it's a different person holding that phone. And there's no fingerprint, no selfie, none of that. It's a frictionless behavioral biometrics that allows us to know who's actually holding that phone. We don't know anything about you. We just know that this is not the same person. Obviously very, very important when it comes to people using devices more and more for important payments. So that was something, a company we acquired to really add technology to our existing business of safety and security. Diversifying solutions and adding a whole new solution, example would be Applied Predictive Technologies. We bought that company several years ago. They have a design of experiments platform that helps merchants and others use data to make data-driven decisions as they go to market. This was a natural extension, product extension for our advisors and information services business. And the third category is simply just a new business. So if you look at the acquisition we've announced last year and completed this year of VocaLink in the UK, this is faster ACH. It's basically an alternative set of infrastructure that's very different than the card rails. And we believe, as I talked about, some of those other use cases in P2P and B2B, their technology and that infrastructure may be as relevant or more than the card rails we operate. And so bringing those together, we think, is something very, very powerful going forward. So to source all of these investments and acquisitions, we engage with a lot of folks. We engage directly with companies. We engage with early stage companies and fully developed companies. But we also talk to venture capitalists, private equity funds, and bankers. So when anyone thinks about how to engage with Mastercard, or to be candid, any strategic investor, it's kind of important to think about who we are and who we are not. So as an example, as a strategic investor, we do not invest with the intention of selling. That is not our goal. We don't try to invest X amount of money and then hope to someday sell it for a larger amount of money. That's just not how we think. We do prioritize our efforts to focus on transactions that are going to unlock value between the parties that have been involved. And any transaction that we consider successful is only successful if all stakeholders involved believe that it's successful over a sustained period of time. So we have a mid and long-term horizon when making investments and acquisitions. This is not about the next 12 or 18 months. So just to wrap it up, when I think about my perspective on the industry and the seat I have, significant untapped opportunity here. This is probably the most exciting time I can imagine for the world of payments. I don't see anything on the horizon that suggests we're going to slow down or it's going to become more simple or more obvious. I think today you're hearing on stage, for every opinion offered, there's more questions about what may or may not happen going forward. So I think it's an incredibly exciting time for us. The macro trends, from my perspective, there may be hiccups along the way, but the macro trends in electronic payments, I think, could not be more positive on a global basis. At Mastercard, we are still investing internally on innovation. We have Mastercard Labs. We have a whole bunch of folks that are creating new products and new technologies to help our partners deliver safe and easier and more rewarding solutions. However, we are also very, very open and excited to partner with folks who can help us get us to that success level faster. So it's not a go it alone. It definitely takes a coalition of the leading and open-minded players. So I want to thank you for your time and attention today very much. Thank you.